Cocaine Cowboys, the deadly rise of Ireland's drug lords, the live show is on sale now. We're on the road on February 10th at the Lime Tree Theatre in Limerick, February 15th in Cork's Everyman Theatre, and on Sunday 18th, we're back at Dublin's 3 Olympia. April takes us to Galway's Town Hall Theatre, Killarney's INEC, and Belfast's Waterfront Studios. Check mcd.ie or venue for ticket sales. I like that, the sort of, the singing through the microphone. Must get Clodagh to do a bit more of that. Up her game, yeah.
You're going to give the context?
No, you give it.
Just our producer there sung us into our conversation.
And we are recording. It was beautiful, John, thank you.
Operatic.
We're back now. It's less than 24 hours, is it, since we had the conversation when I was going, why are they letting these funerals get out of control? Yeah. Why aren't they policing them? And we had the big chat about whether or not this, the softly approach or the more heavy-handed policing. And it all exploded out of control last night.
Yeah. So you were right all along.
Was that right, Niall? Always correct.
That's the point of that intro.
Yeah, that's the point of that intro, exactly, just to let you know, remind you. But no, what time did you phone me at? About 10 o'clock last night?
About 10 o'clock, yeah. So, I mean, basically what happened was there was, as would be standard, there was a sort of a reception after the funeral in a pub in Cabra. There was a large number of people there who had attended the funeral, general mourners. I think the party were then due to go to a local GAA club, but somehow violence broke out amongst the large crowd that was there, and there seems to have certainly been a wheel brace used at some point during a melee just outside the pub in Cabra. It's also talk of maybe knives being used and initial reports of a hammer attack, but either way, there was certainly some sort of heavy violence, let's put it that way. So
do we know, did this row break out amongst mourners or did people arrive?
Well, I think it seems most likely that it broke out amongst mourners rather than people arriving. It seems that that's the way it happened, all right.
Yeah.
It's a quiet part of Cabra, obviously Quarry Road, and it seems to have been very shocking. There was reports of puddles of blood on the floor. Obviously the whole road was...
in the name of God is going on at the moment? Is there something in the water system in Dublin?
Yeah, but look, I mean, things are obviously very heightened.
I mean, the other night, a guy is standing on Talbot Street and a guy comes along with a machete and starts just walloping him around the legs with it.
Yeah.
And this is at a funeral.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy. It feels like everything's out of control a bit, doesn't it?
Well, it does, and it certainly is. I mean, people are grieving, and I mean, it's terrible that they have to endure that in the middle of their grief. There was a lot of onlookers there who would have witnessed it. Certainly there was a number of injuries. 2 men ultimately were taken to the Mater Hospital for treatment.
And we had in particular the name of one of them last night, who is Derek Boyd, a 29-year-old who was convicted. People may remember this. It's only a few years ago. He accidentally shot his sister dead.
Yeah, I mean, it was only last year.
Was it only last year? Yeah.
So, I mean, he shot her. Derek Boyd would have been a close friend of Brandon Ledwidge.
Brandon Ledwidge, yeah.
The man who was killed and whose funeral people were at. Derek Boyd was involved in, look, I remember this story because I think it was one of those stories towards late in the week when we were about to go to print. Basically, we got a report that a woman had been shot dead in Finglas, Sandra Boyd. Yeah. Obviously, it's much more uncommon for women to be killed in what we thought at that point was a sort of a gangland assassination, or certainly maybe a case of mistaken identity, or you always think domestics or those sort of things. So initially then, that's what we heard, and you think that's really, really shocking. And then you start hearing reports, well, she was actually shot by her own brother. And that
was an accident, basically.
Well, it did turn out to be the case. So he basically...
He had an illegally held loaded semi-automatic pistol in his house, and he was handling it, and it went off and he killed her, basically. Yeah,
I mean, what he told the court was that he had acquired the weapon because he was in fear for his life from drug gangs, basically. and that there had been some incident, it appears, and he'd picked up the pistol and his finger had slipped basically on the trigger, and he'd shot his sister, killed her.
Well, there was no suggestion, nor was it accepted by the court, that it was anything but that. It was accepted that that's what happened.
Oh, 100%.
It was a complete accident.
It was a complete accident, but obviously,
it goes into all the kind of reasons why you shouldn't be handling firearms. No. Firstly, these young guys with no training and obviously no reason for them other than to have them as either protection. I don't know.
Well, I mean, look, he acquired that firearm obviously because of gangland activity. He certainly seemed incredibly upset, as you can imagine, certainly sincerely upset, and he described it as an unpardonable sin. He was ultimately convicted of manslaughter and unlawful possession of a semi-automatic pistol. His own mother spoke up in court, pleaded for him not to be treated too harshly, saying the family has been left shattered and broken beyond repair. And, he gave a statement to Gardaí describing, the moment, and, it's tragic, but this is, again, I think we spoke yesterday about the ripple effect of, gangland criminality effectively. And this is an example of a ripple effect, an unforeseen situation that arises due to the fact that people have guns, people have access to guns. Why did he acquire the gun? Because of the drugs trade, because of the threats of the drugs trade, because of the violence associated with the drugs trade. And in all of those...
Sometimes, you remember that situation in Limerick when your man was at one of the collopies?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was at a party and he was showing everybody his gun and he ended up basically shooting himself.
Yeah, Philip Collopy.
By accident.
The younger brother of some of the...
Shot himself in the head.
Shot himself in the head. So so this is the ripple effect of what people are involved in, which is ultimately the drugs trade. So Derek Boyd was convicted and sentenced to 2 years in prison. I'm not sure how long he's out. It can't have been that long. He obviously served a bit of time on remand. He was only sentenced late last year to the 2 years, but he would have already got credit for time served while he awaited sentencing. So he must have been out quite briefly.
So he has suffered slash injuries at the funeral of his friend, Brandon Ledwidge, and...
There's another man as well, hospitalised, and there's other
head injuries.
Yeah, and there's other minor injuries suffered by other people. So, and then there was very heightened tensions apparently in the Mater Hospital as well in the aftermath. It's very, very chaotic. It shows there's we've seen, of course, attacks at funerals before over the years, but for most people, a funeral is a time of respect.
And I suppose, what do we do? We did talk about the policing, and I did think that the guys on the motorbikes, speeding up on pavements was enough, really, that maybe a cop should stand forward and perhaps, get them off the motorbike, perhaps take the motorbike from them, etc. Is there a problem here that between Drew Harris and the Garda Ombudsman, the Gardaí on the beat are afraid to do that because they're afraid they're going to end up suspended or under investigation?
Well, I think there probably is some truth in that, that they are afraid to go in circumstances like that. I think they're also afraid of mobile phones. I think...
It's you have to ask at this stage, have we thrown the baby out with the bathwater? We wanted, a different type of policing. We wanted to get shot of all the sort of, the heavy gang. The heavy gang and the likes of all that went on. And, maybe police at one point some police were a little bit too fond of beating somebody up.
Well, look, there have been some...
And overstepping their power and all the rest of it. But what we've been left with is a force that are... And can you blame them? You need your job. You've young kids at home. Can you blame them not stepping in because they're going to be investigated if they do their job with any level of force or any level of efficiency?
Well, GSOC, of course, put out a statement disputing that, to saying that the guards are allowed reasonable force under the law and that they don't pursue people if they behave within the boundaries of what they're allowed to.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean,
I'm not even going to speak here now.
No. Well, we're allowed to disagree, aren't we? I mean, I think that there are, you don't want to go back to Lugs Brannigan taking lumps out of people, and you just can't. It just won't be tolerated.
I just think it's gone too far. I think it's utterly ridiculous.
I think one of the problems with GSOC actually, right, and it's not even that the powers they have. It's the absolutely years-long procedures. Yeah. So somebody can make
people are out on suspension for 3 years and they come to the end of it and they have found nothing against them. 3 years. So and what career have you left after that?
Well, I think that is one of the big problems. I mean, it seems to be so inefficient. They don't seem to be staffed up. They don't seem to be able to come to conclusions quickly. And it seems to just drag over officers' cases, even if they know I'm going to be okay at the end of this. It becomes such a difficult process. But no, we probably are going to disagree that I don't want people going back belting the head off young fellas on bikes. There has to be other ways to do it after all. I'm not
talking about belting the head off them. I'm talking about arresting them.
Yeah.
They are driving at speed during a funeral on a public pavement where people are trying to go about their business. They're behaving in the same way in communities. Certainly we were talking yesterday about in Finglas. They are destroying the complete fabric of communities and we stand back and do nothing. They're bringing a funeral to a pub and we won't name that pub because God loved that pub because they don't want that kind of publicity.
No, that's actually a very quiet pub.
You know what I mean? And they're bringing their shit in there as well.
Yeah.
And beating the hell out of one another with wheel braces from cars and all the rest of it at a funeral.
Yeah.
And we stand back and we do nothing because we're afraid of, their sensitivities.
Well, I mean, look, it's another world, isn't it? If you hear some of the comments at the funeral,
Yeah.
It is another world.
The funeral in a church, I'm not in any way religious, but I understand that, people will see a church as being a place for great respect. And they're up talking about him, that he was a gas man, he was never without a joint in his mouth and, a couple of steroids down his gob or what.
I don't know if it was steroids also, but, look.
Gas or something.
Yeah.
He's a hilarious guy, just absolute ticket.
Yeah.
And this is all playing out on a church altar.
Yeah.
And the church have to stand back and this church has to be used to celebrate drug dealing, drug taking, and that kind of lifestyle that led to that young man being shot dead in his front doorstep. And we celebrate it in the church. They go out in the streets and behave whatever way they want and then carry on this stuff down in a pub.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there'd be loads of people there, Nicola, that have nothing to do with fighting and all that.
Absolutely.
I have to say that, there'd be very decent, respectable people who are at that funeral and at that pub and would be just as horrified as you.
Absolutely.
Just as horrified as you that a solemn occasion is being, tarnished by this. But it just shows you there are other people out there whose values are just so long gone, aren't it? I mean, just the idea of whacking somebody with a wheel brace alone.
And coming up the street here and whacking a man standing at a bus stop with a machete.
Yeah. It is shocking, it is shocking. And the problems with all of this stuff.
It's amazing how one thing happens after another. It's like going to a restaurant, they get the first thing wrong and they just keep getting everything wrong, isn't it?
What a middle class analogy.
I'm sure. Well, it's horrific when that happens. But I'm sure, Justice Minister Helen McEntee and the Commissioner Drew Harris just put their heads in their hands and they heard this about the funeral last night.
Yeah,
I'm sure they just went up seriously. More.
So how, there's just, it's
it just feels very lawless. And we're not ever sort of saying that things have changed or we're never, but it does feel that. It feels like there's an awful lot of crazy stuff going on and all happening together.
And it's not a good, it's a bad spectacle. And it's for people, we come back to the people that are living the good, decent, hardworking people who are living in the middle of all that and trying to raise kids.
And if you heard the business people this week having to come out and fight, tell people that the city is safer than it's ever been because there's more guards on the streets now. Please come out. This is their biggest time of year. They want Christmas shopping. They want people being out in the pubs. And I have to say, I've spoken to a lot of people who said they're not going anywhere near town.
Yeah, I don't agree with that myself.
No,
I don't think it's unsafe. I don't think walking around the north inner city is particularly unsafe, even at night. But there is a sort of an increased lawlessness there. And the problem, again, if you go back, as we spoke about in relation to the riots, there's this minority of people that are totally disenfranchised in society, that are totally living in a different world than other people. And in that world, there's things that are acceptable, and these things are violence and drugs and all of these things. And whatever is being done by society is not reaching them properly. Now, I'm not saying that's society's fault, because anybody who goes to a funeral party with a wheel brace and starts whacking somebody with it, they have to take responsibility for their own actions. That's not an excuse for them. But it is a reality that neither the justice system doesn't frighten them, the moral standards of society don't reach them. And it is a problem. Of course it's a problem.
But I mean, you can just see how drugs have destroyed this city.
Yeah, you can. And I mean, and continue to do so.
It's just extraordinary. Like when you just look up the street, you see all those lives that are just destroyed by it. And,
Yeah, look, I mean, I know you talk to people. I was talking to somebody, and basically she's a grandmother, around our age, and
I never liked that. I know you're going to tell the really nice, sad story.
No. Well, I know. But remember, Linford Christie was a grandfather when he won an Olympic bronze medal in the 100 metres race at the age of 34.
Come back with that.
So I'm just saying, you could be 34 if you don't want to reveal your true age.
No, I would be horrified if I was a grandmother just yet. I'm just not ready for it. I'm not ready for it. I still identify as 26.
Okay, well.
But yeah, grandmothers our age. Go on, sorry.
Raising their grandkids, and I just think that's due to broadly due to the drugs trade, and I just think that is such a tragic situation, isn't it, for those kids and for those grandparents and for those parents.
And you know what?
That are
aren't
lost.
Those kids, aren't they lucky to have a grandparent that is functioning, that can raise them, and that is willing to sacrifice,
their own lives.
Go back to start from scratch again,
They are, but it is still not the proper order of life.
Not, no.
Like, that is not the order of life. And for that, that's only disrupted by the presence of drugs on our streets. Now, how you solve that again?
And still, there'll be absolute droves of people out this weekend.
There will.
Who don't give a shit about those people or those communities. Yeah. And they'll be buying their bags of coke.
There will.
And they will not be thinking about where the money's going, or nor will they care.
Similarly, there'll be multi-millionaires jetting off from Ireland for big holidays, and they be doing their absolute best not to pay the taxes that would also possibly fund services for the people that are suffering from disadvantage. So that's the reality.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll leave it at that.
Thanks very much, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.